Chapter 1. Never Married. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Never Married. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. In October, the cool autumn day suddenly turned cold. The winter of the year was about to begin. Lu Sanyang believed that she had enough food reserved for the winter. From now on, she could stay at home for the entire winter season just doing embroidery work. She sat under the candlelight. On the wide embroidery table was the piece of embroidery that Lu Sanyang had started working upon. She slowly and carefully threaded the needle. This was the only skill she had, to make a living. She was 75 years old. Her parents had long passed away, and 2 years ago, her second brother passed away as well. Her eldest brother was still alive and 3 years older than her. His health was still all right. She was an old girl and had never married in her life. Her parents were concerned about her and gave her all the money before they died. Her brothers and sisters-in-law also treated her very well and did not mind their parents' decision. Her nephews and nieces came to visit her often and brought her necessities. However, most of the time, she was alone. Many of her female friends had already passed away. The room was quiet and there was only the sound of the night watchman outside. The weather is dry and things are flammable, take care not to catch the fire. Dong! 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 After hitting the gong 3 times, the night watchman slowly walked further and further away, and then the world quieted down again. Lu Sanyang smiled and continued doing the embroidery. Other than some rumors about her when she was young, the rest of her life had really been smooth sailing. Before the age of 30, there were some matchmakers who wanted to match her with men who were either old bachelors or widowers who had lost their wives and contained a house full of children. She didn't like any of them, neither did her parents. Year after year passed and she eventually became old. She was not married. When she was young, she was quite skilled in embroidery. The money she earned was subsidized to her 2 brothers to support their family. She also doted on her nephews and nieces. Her efforts were not in vain. Her nephews and nieces treated her fairly well. When they grew up, they visited her very often. A few days ago, her eldest brother even brought his grandson to visit her. That little fatty was really likable. She gave the little fatty a few pieces of candy. His eyes sparkled when he ate them. Before he left, he started crying and refused to leave. Lu Sanyang comforted him by saying that she would give more to him the next time he came over. Only then did the little fatty leave from there reluctantly. Lu Sanyang embroidered while recalling the past. Her mind became active as she recollected many things, until the rooster started to crow. Lu Sanyang put down the embroidery in her hand with a gentle smile on her face. For many years, she had never been so lost in her old memories like tonight, so much so that she did not even hear it when the rooster made the noise. She picked up the walking stick beside her, blew out the candle, and slowly walked to the bed. She had lived in this house for decades, so she could navigate her way even with her eyes closed. She laid on the bed and covered herself with a blanket. This was a new blanket, and she put it under the sun a few days ago. It felt very warm. She closed her eyes but couldn't fall asleep. Slowly, she fell into the old memories yet again. When she was young, her mother liked her the most and praised her for being beautiful. After her 14th birthday, more and more people came to ask for her hand in marriage. A scholar from Willow Alley came to ask for her hand in marriage. He was already a scholar at the age of 15 and was about to take the county level exam. Lu Sanyang did not dislike this marriage, but one day, she saw him kicking a stray cat with a terrifying expression on his face. She was so scared that she begged her mother for a long time to reject the matchmaker. The peddler in Willow Street was said to be very capable. He could earn dozens of taels of silver a year and was rich. However, unfortunately, one day, when she and her mother went out to buy clothes, they happened to see this guy coming out of the gambling house. His eyes were bloodshot and scary. This time, before she needed to beg, her mother rejected the matchmaker herself. Great aunt, boo-hoo. You haven't given any candy to Huzi yet. The child's cry interrupted Lu Sanyang's train of thought. She was puzzled as to where this crying was coming from. When she opened her eyes, she saw that the little fatty was crying with his eyes wide open. He was fair and tender, and Lu Sanyang liked him to the core. Ever since she was old, everything she saw was blurry. But this time, she could see the surroundings so clearly. Before she could go over and hug the little guy, she realized that something was wrong. There were so many people all around. Young, middle-aged, and old were all crying. Why were they crying? Lu Sanyang saw her eldest brother. Her eldest brother bent over and sobbed sadly, clenching his walking stick. His snot and tears were smearing his gray beard. For some reason, Lu Sanyang wanted to laugh. She had not looked into the mirror for many years. If her eldest brother was like this, she must also be very old and ugly too. Lu Dalong cried sadly. Sanyang, don't worry. Go and reunite with father, mother, and second brother. Wait for me in the netherworld. In no time, I'll come and be with you all. Lu Dalong could not stand properly. His two sons standing beside him supported him. Both his daughters in law were also sobbing. Everyone in the room was filled with grief. The juniors whom Lu Sanyang doted upon were also shedding tears. Great aunt, don't worry. I'll visit your grave every year. I won't forget how good you were to me. Even if I die, my son and grandson won't forget you. Every year on tomb sweeping day, I'll burn you some joss paper. Me too. We'll burn joss paper for great aunt. Lu Sanyang suddenly realized that she was dead. No wonder there were so many people in her courtyard. No wonder her brother was crying so sadly. Lu Sanyang smiled. She was not sad. She was already 75 years old and had rarely suffered from illness in her life. Other than being lonely during her entire life, she had no regrets in this life. She did not suffer any torture and died in her sleep. Lu Sanyang's vision became darker and darker, and her consciousness gradually disappeared. After an unknown period of time, Lu Sanyang heard a crackling noise. This sound reminded her of a large banana tree in the backyard of her old house. Every spring, when there was a storm, this was the sound of rain hitting the banana leaves. With a creak, someone pushed the door open and entered. Lu Sanyang felt like she was being shaken a few times, and a gentle voice was heard. Sanyang, get up and drink some medicine before sleeping. Madame Wei helped Lu Sanyang up with her strong arms. Lu Sanyang opened her eyes and looked at the person in front of her who felt both unfamiliar and familiar. She was a little stunned and remembered that this familiar face was her mother, Madame Wei, when she was young. She mumbled in a daze. Is this the netherworld? Why isn't it dark? Why am I seeing my mother? Wasn't my mother dead many years ago? Ouch! Lu Sanyang covered her head in pain. Chapter 2. Back to when she was a girl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Back to when she was a girl. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Madame Wei knocked at Lu Sanyang's forehead. What nonsense are you talking about? Open your eyes and take a good look. Me, your mother, is still healthy and good. Don't spout nonsense at such a young age. Bodhisattva, my daughter was just talking rubbish, please don't take it seriously. Lu Sanyang looked at her mother who was praying, and tears welled up in her eyes. Mother, how's third sister? A head popped in from outside. Lu Sanyang looked at him. The person was wearing a white coat with a worried look on his face. He walked in and reached out to touch Lu Sanyang's forehead. Is the fever gone? Lu Erlang thought to himself. Get well soon, or mother will definitely beat me to death. When Lu Sanyang saw him, she suddenly burst into tears. This was her second brother, her dear second brother when he was young. He passed away 2 years ago. Now, he was alive and kicking in front of her, still in his youth. Lu Sanyang was both shocked and happy, thinking to herself. So this is what happens after death. Sister, don't cry. It's all my fault. Let mother punish me, but don't cry. Lu Erlang panicked and looked at Lu Sanyang worriedly. Madame Wei frowned. Erlang, stay here and look after your sister. I have to go out for a while. Your sister has been saying stupid things since she woke up. She might have lost her mind. Madame Wei quickly got up and left. Lu Sanyang couldn't stop crying. She held Lu Erlang and said, Second brother, you are quite good looking right now. But when you got old, you looked ugly. For some reason, you and first brother liked to grow beards. Actually, beards don't look good on you. Lu Erlang was really frightened. Third sister, stop it. Second brother is scared. Have you really lost your mind? Lu Erlang had heard many strange anecdotes about dead people being possessed. Being grabbed by her, Lu Erlang trembled in fear and thought to himself. What kind of demon are you? Don't mess with my sister. Come at me. Lu Sanyang burst out laughing. She wiped her tears and laughed, thinking to herself that her second brother was really interesting. Lu Erlang looked at Lu Sanyang fearfully with an expression that said, Don't eat me. Suddenly, Lu Sanyang stopped smiling when she felt her second brother's body temperature. Didn't they say that souls had no temperature? Moreover, her second brother's eyes were bright and sparkling. Second brother, is Sanyang all right? Another head popped in. Looking at the familiar figure, Lu Sanyang fainted. The person who came was none other than her eldest brother, Lu Daolong. Lu Sanyang felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She still remembered that a while ago Lu Daolong was crying and wailing in the morning hall. However, now, he walked towards Lu Sanyang with a young face and body. The temperature, the heartbeat, and the warm flesh seemed to mean something. Lu Sanyang was shocked and fainted. In a daze, Lu Sanyang felt her body burning. She was helped up by a strong arm to take the medicine. A village Taoist in a yellow Tai Chi robe was jumping around her bed. He was burning incense and paper, the smell of which made Lu Sanyang feel suffocated. Later, he even gave her some scented ash to drink. Lu Sanyang was extremely disgusted and did not want to drink it, but was forced to drink it by Madame Wei, who loved her daughter dearly. She could feel what Madame Wei was thinking. Madame Wei thought to herself. Who cares if it's useful or not? I'll try everything I can. Maybe this will cure my daughter. My daughter has spoken so much nonsense. When she recovers, I'll definitely go to the temple to pray and pay my respects. Lu Sanyang wanted to vomit but immediately sensed what Madame Wei was thinking next. Madame Wei thought to herself. Don't vomit. If you vomit, you'll have to drink it again. Lu Sanyang forcibly resisted the urge to vomit. She was extremely tired and her body was very heavy. Madame Wei fed her daughter some medicine and porridge and wiped her body clean. After repeating this for 10 days, Lu Sanyang eventually woke up, full of energy. She looked at the familiar house and her blurry memories gradually became clear. Her parents were still young, and her 2 brothers were only 16 or 17 years old. She did not expect to return to her teenage years after her death. Lu Sanyang did not understand how this happened either, but after a couple of days, she accepted this reality. Thinking of her previous life, Lu Sanyang clenched her fists. In her previous life, she had been a spinster for her entire life. This time, she had a bold idea. She wanted to get married. Lu Sanyang put on her shoes and walked out of the house. It was spring in March, as well as the farming season. Her family had more than 20 acres of farmland, so the entire family was busy. The weather this morning was sunny and the sun was warm. Lu Sanyang moved a stool to the courtyard and sat under the sunlight. She was born on the 6th of February, and her 14th birthday was just 1 month ago. After the spring harvest, people came over to propose one after another. At the thought of her previous life, she was a little anxious about how she could protect her reputation. In her previous life, there were many people who wanted to marry her, but not many were suitable. After Lu Shun and Zhang Xuan, whom Lu Sanyang rejected, she had gotten a reputation for being unnecessarily picky. For the rest of her life, this turned out to be fatal. This time, she had to change it. She was beautiful and had fair skin. It was impossible that she couldn't get married. Her mother was a cook, so her culinary skills were also excellent. Besides, her embroidery skills were not bad either. Any man who could marry her would be considered lucky. Seeing that it was almost noon, Lu Sanyang walked towards the kitchen. Her mother was working as a cook at the Yellow Crane Tower restaurant in town and was not home all day. Her father and 2 brothers were farming and would come back for lunch at noon. It was the right time for her to cook. The Lu family was quite well off. Lu Sanyang first started a fire to cook the coarse grain. Then, she poured some corn flour and some wheat flour. She kneaded them into dough, and steamed them. In spring, there was meat in the house every day. After stir-frying it with spices, it would become a meat dish. Father and her brothers were farming, so they needed to refuel their energy. Lu Sanyang had a smile on her face. Other than not getting married for the rest of her life, she was really very happy. Suddenly, Lu Sanyang was startled by a clang. She turned around and saw that the light in the kitchen was blocked by a tall figure. It took her a while to adjust her vision and see the tall figure clearly. She was frightened and stuttered. "Who are you? Who are you looking for?" This person was a little familiar. He didn't look old and was probably about the same age as her eldest brother. Because the memories of her younger years were still blurry, she couldn't recognize this person immediately. "Chu Yen. I brought the sickle here." Without changing his expression, Chu Yen replied curtly. "Chu Yen." Lu Sanyang was struck dumb. This was the powerful general of Dingbei from her previous life. She had heard that this person was so fierce that on the battlefield, enemies would run away when they heard his name. Chapter 3. Chu Yen, the blacksmith. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Chu Yen, the blacksmith. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Chu Yen placed the 2 brand new sickles on the stove and looked straight at the pot that was starting to steam. As soon as he entered, he had seen Lu Sanyang cutting the meat. Her skin was fair, and when the sun shone on her face, it was so fair that it seemed to be glowing. He saw her fair forehead, nose, and chin. She was smiling slightly. At that moment it was not an exaggeration to say that she was a fairy. At first, Lu Sanyang did not notice him. After she saw him, she became frightened. Chu Yen felt that even her frightened face looked good. He looked away at the steaming pot and recalled that Lu Sanyang's mother, Madame Wei, was a chef. Lu Sanyang must have inherited her skills and the food she cooked would definitely be delicious. Lu Sanyang was a little afraid of him. "The cornbread is ready. Do you want some?" Her brothers were both tall, about 1.85 meters, but this Chu Yen was even taller than them. She estimated that he was about 1.9 meters tall. There was no expression on his face, and his thick eyebrows were fierce. He was already like this at the age of 17 or 18. No wonder he could become famous all around the country when he grew up. It was said that later on, when he was angry, no one dared to look him in the eyes. At that time, Lu Sanyang felt that these were just false rumors. Now, she believed it. She didn't want to spend another moment with him. She just wanted to send him away as soon as possible. Chu Yen nodded and said, yes. Lu Sanyang opened the pot lid. The fragrance of corn wafted into her nose. She picked up 2 large cornbread with her chopsticks and placed them in a porcelain bowl before handing it to Chu Yen. It's a little hot. Take the bowl. Chu Yen did not speak. He took the cornbread and turned to leave. He said coldly, thank you. He was not afraid of heat. This temperature was nothing to him. He took a bite and it was indeed as delicious as he had imagined. When the tall figure walked out, Lu Sanyang heaved a sigh of relief. There was no need for him to thank her. All Lu Sanyang wanted was for him to leave as soon as possible. Chu Yen, what are you eating? Lu Erlang ran back in a hurry. He was picking seeds when Chu Yen had brought the sickle to him. Hence, he had casually said, send the sickles to my house. When he was in the field, he told first brother about this. First brother had immediately scolded him. Sanyang is the only one at home. I don't know if mother is back yet. You idiot, hurry back and see if Chu Yen is doing anything rash and stupid. Lu Erlang ran back quickly. His sister was already 14 years old. What if Chu Yen fell in love with her? When he ran back to the courtyard, his heart was pounding and he was panting. When he saw Chu Yen eating 2 large cornbreads, his mind went blank. Chu Yen looked at Lu Erlang and replied. Cornbread. Lu Erlang was panting. He knew that it was cornbread. He could see it with his eyes. What he wanted to ask was why Chu Yen took cornbread from his family. After saying that, Chu Yen walked out. Vaguely, he heard Lu Sanyang's voice. When Lu Sanyang heard the commotion, she came out of the house and smiled at Lu Erlang. Second brother, he came to deliver sickles to us, so I gave him 2 pieces. Lu Erlang heaved a sigh of relief. I see. It was good that nothing happened. Lu Erlang was relieved that his sister was fine. He swallowed his saliva and said, is it done? I want to eat some too. Hee hee. Lu Sanyang smiled. Go ahead. Be careful. It's hot. Chu Yen only stopped in his tracks for a moment before leaving. He did not have the habit of eavesdropping. However, Lu Sanyang's voice was just like her, soft and pleasant to the ear. Just as Lu Sanyang finished instructing him, she heard her second brother screaming after touching the hot bread. When Lu Erlang saw that Chu Yen was holding the cornbread and didn't seem to get burnt at all, he thought it would be fine. When he picked it up, the hot cornbread made him shout. Even after he dropped the cornbread, the heat was still burning his hand. Lu Sanyang quickly entered the house and scooped a cup of cold water before putting her brother's hand in it. Instantly, she heard Lu Erlang's voice in her mind. Lu Erlang thought to himself. Damn it, is Chu Yan's skin as thick as a city wall? Why isn't he afraid of being scalded? It's so hot. How embarrassing that third sister saw it. Lu Sanyang looked at Lu Erlang. His mouth had not moved. Why did she hear these voices? Lu Erlang was frustrated. Oh, I forgot. Chu Yen is a blacksmith, so naturally he isn't afraid of heat. Blacksmiths are all thick-skinned. Lu Sanyang let go of his hand and looked at Lu Erlang. The voices were suddenly gone. After soaking his hand in the cold water, Lu Erlang felt much better. It was no longer burning. He took out his hand and said, Sanyang, thank you. Lu Erlang did not notice Lu Sanyang's confused expression. He took the gourd dipper from Lu Sanyang and went out to splash water. The moment his hand touched her, Lu Sanyang heard Lu Erlang's thoughts again. Lu Erlang was in a good mood and thought to himself. It's good to have such a sweet sister. Lu Sanyang's heart beat faster. Next, Lu Erlang helped her start the fire. Whenever Lu Sanyang touched him, she could hear his thoughts. Sanyang's culinary skills are even better than mother's. When she turns around to get the onions later, I'll steal a piece of the bread. It's all my fault that Sanyang gets sick this time. When spring harvest finishes, I'll save some copper coins to buy her a hair ornament. It'll definitely make her happy. Lu Sanyang was stunned. When she first woke up, she had sensed this incredible ability several times. However, at that time, she was in a daze and did not think too much about it. By the time Lu Dalong and Mr. Lu returned that day, she had already accepted this fact and treated it as a gift from the heavens. Madame Wei returned at night for dinner. Mr. Lu looked at Lu Sanyang lovingly. Sanyang, you just recovered. You don't have to cook. I'll get your second brother to come back early to cook. Mr. Lu doted on her a lot, and Lu Sanyang felt very warm in her heart. She smiled. Father, I'm already fine. Don't worry. All of you have been so busy recently, so I'll help clean up the house. Mr. Lu nodded and looked at his daughter with satisfaction. Alright, but you have to rest well. Just cook something simple. Lu Dalong swallowed the cornbread and meat in his mouth and smiled at Lu Sanyang. It's alright. I'll get second brother to come back early to help third sister. Third sister, feel free to instruct him. Lu Erlang took a big gulp of coarse grain porridge and said, yes, just give me the order. Lu Sanyang felt choked up with emotions. She bit her cornbread and nodded. Not long after dinner, his father and two brothers went to bed. Lu Sanyang cleaned up the dishes and took out a small round rack. She had learned embroidery a long time ago and was now embroidering something to earn some money. Lu Sanyang, are you at home? A voice came from outside. Lu Sanyang was stunned. The voice of the young girl was a little familiar. She had to think about who it was. Sanyang, are you all right now? We're here to see you. Can you open the door for us? After Lu Sanyang matched the voices with the memories in her mind, she opened the door and said, Ju, Ji, shall we, come in? Chapter 4. Marriage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Marriage Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. The girls outside the door were exactly who Lu Sanyang thought to be. Lu Sanyang opened the door and let the sisters in. Looking at the young girls, Lu Sanyang panicked. Lu Hui looked at Lu Sanyang and asked worriedly. Sanyang, are you still not recovered? We all know that your mother invited a Taoist to pacify your soul last time. She said that your soul was uneasy and she didn't want us to disturb you. Lu Sanyang recalled the bad memories of drinking scented ashes for the past few days and revealed a disgusted expression. She never wanted to drink that thing again in her life. Sanyang, this is brown sugar I brought for you. It can nourish your body. Put some into water and drink it. Lu Hui opened the basket. There was a small pot of brown sugar inside. This was an expensive item that would cost some copper coins. Lu Sanyang subconsciously rejected her. Hui, I can't accept it. As Lu Hui smiled, her eyes formed a curve, and there was a pair of dimples on her face. She waved her hand. You're not allowed to reject it. I bought it with my own money. We're good friends. This is the least I can do for you. Lu Sanyang was very touched. Lu Juer carefully removed the cloth of the basket. There were a dozen eggs inside. She smiled and said, Sanyang, these are from the hen I raised. It's the first time it laid eggs. They're definitely delicious. Lu Jier also opened her basket. Sanyang, these are two little quails my brother caught. They don't have much meat, but when you stew them, the soup will be delicious. In the basket, two quails with wings tied together were lying in the basket. They flapped their wings in fear, wanting to take off, but their wings were tied up, so they couldn't escape from the basket. Tears welled up in Lu Sanyang's eyes. In her previous life, her friends did not even live to the age of 70. Their relationship had always been good. After they died, Lu Sanyang was very sad. Now that they were all alive in front of her, Lu Sanyang wanted to cry. Lu Hui started to worry. Sanyang, don't cry. My mother said that it takes a long time to pacify the soul. Take a good rest. We'll come to see you next time. The three of them stood up, opened the door, and walked out. Lu Sanyang wiped her tears and got up to chase after them. Lu Hui and Lu Jie both turned around and waved at her, indicating for her to return to the house. The three of them disappeared around the corner of the alley. Only then did Lu Sanyang retract her gaze. Just as she was about to close the door, she saw Chu Yan standing opposite her courtyard, looking at her. Chu Yan's gaze was very deep. Coupled with his innate fierceness, Lu Sanyang felt her legs go weak instantly. This person was too scary. She closed the door in a panic, as if a ferocious beast would pounce on her and eat her up if she didn't run away. Chu Yan came to deliver the hoe. As soon as he came out, he saw Lu Sanyang leaning against the courtyard door, looking at the girl's departing figures with tears in her eyes. She was very weak and delicate. Chu Yan couldn't move his eyes away from her crying face. He felt as if there was a ferocious beast inside him trying to break free from the cage and escape. When Lu Sanyang found him, she looked so scared, like a sheep seeing a wolf. Chu Yan suddenly chuckled. He looked at the closed door not far away and walked off. For the entire afternoon, Lu Sanyang did not open the door again. The sky started to darken. Lu Sanyang was busy in the kitchen. The two quails given by Luer were first drowned to death. Then after cleaning them up, she chopped them into pieces. She heated some oil in the pot and poured the quails into the pot to stir-fry. At the same time, she steamed cornbread. She went to the backyard and picked a bunch of vegetables. She took a few artichokes and scraped them. Then, she steamed 3 eggs. When Madame Wei returned, Lu Sanyang was adding artichokes to the pot. The freshness of the quails was appetizing. Madame Wei was satisfied but also felt bad for her daughter. Who asked you to cook? You have not recovered yet completely. Madame Wei had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. Everyone preferred sons, but she was different. She really loved her daughter. When her daughter was 14 years old, the number of people who came to talk about marriage had increased. At the thought that her precious daughter was getting married, Madame Wei couldn't help but feel sad. Madame Wei took the spoon from Lu Sanyang and said, "Go and start the fire. I'll cook." Lu Sanyang was stunned. When their hands touched, she heard Madame Wei's inner voice. Madame Wei thought to herself. Although there are many people coming to propose marriage, I have to choose carefully. I have to find a good husband for Sanyang. That scholar in the alley is not bad. I wonder if Sanyang will like him. Lu Sanyang was speechless. She didn't like that scholar, Lu Shun. In his previous life, Lu Shun was a scholar on the surface and had a bright future. However, in private, he was very ruthless and resentful. He loved to torture living creatures. Whether it was stray cats or dogs, he would kick or torture them to death whenever he saw them. Because she saw Lu Shun torturing the cat, she was frightened by his ferocious look and begged Madame Wei not to agree to this marriage. Later, Lu Shun married the daughter of a well-to-do bookstore owner. That family only had one daughter, and she devoted herself to supporting Lu Shun's studies and taking care of him. However, after Lu Shun became an official, he divorced this woman. At that time, the matter was blown up and many people said that he was ungrateful. After the rumors died down, the woman's family moved away. Lu Sanyang did not expect the matchmaker to come so soon. In her previous life, it was June when Madame Wei asked Sun Yang about it. Lu Sanyang started the fire absent-mindedly. The sky darkened, and the fragrance of food wafted out. Madame Wei had already started setting the table. The door to the courtyard opened. Lu Sanyang heard Lu Erlang snort. "I'm so unlucky. I actually fell into the ditch. Chu Yen, thank you so much. If you didn't happen to pass by, I would have suffered a lot." When Lu Sanyang heard the sound, she came out of the kitchen and saw a tall figure helping Lu Erlang sit down. At the same time, he put down the hoe and basket on his back. With dirt all over his body, Lu Erlang was thanking Chu Yen. Chu Yen was also a little dirty. He was not as talkative as Lu Erlang and only nodded slightly. At this moment, Chu Yen looked at Lu Sanyang. Lu Sanyang felt her legs go weak. She was really terrified. For some reason, when she met Chu Yan's dark eyes, Lu Sanyang felt like she was a frightened sheep. As for Chu Yen, he was like a tiger eyeing its prey. She was afraid that he would skin and swallow her. "Sanyang, hurry up and get some ointment for me." When Lu Erlang saw Lu Sanyang, he wailed. Lu Sanyang looked at him with a worried expression and returned to fetch the ointment. Madame Wei asked her. "What's wrong? Why is your second brother wailing outside?" Lu Sanyang took out an ointment from under the cupboard. "Second brother fell into the ditch on his way back and sprained his ankle." Chapter 5. He said, "Are you afraid of me?" You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. He said, "Are you afraid of me?" Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Madame Wei rolled her eyes. Doesn't he know how old he is now? What a reckless boy. I guess his eyes are growing out of his head. He deserves it. Lu Sanyang smiled and looked at Madame Wei. "Mother, should I apply the ointment for second brother?" Madame Wei snorted. "Rub it on your brother. Remember to rub it hard to make him scream." Lu Sanyang smiled. She was really lucky to have a mother like Madame Wei. Madame Wei was very protective of her children. She was the only one who could hit and scold her children, but she wouldn't allow anyone else to treat her children badly. When Lu Sanyang came out with the ointment, Chu Yen was still there. Knowing that a tall figure was sitting there, Lu Sanyang felt extremely ill-at-ease. Some people had a very strong sense of presence even if they didn't say a word. Especially when she knew that Chu Yen would be an extraordinary person in the future, Lu Sanyang was even more afraid of him. Lu Erlang was not sensitive to Sanyang's mood at all. He stretched out his leg and said, "Sanyang, quick. Rub it for me. It hurts." Seeing that Lu Erlang's ankle was already swollen, Lu Erlang sighed and opened the ointment to apply some on Lu Erlang's foot. Lu Erlang shouted in pain. "Sanyang, don't rub it so hard." Chu Yen sat in the courtyard and his gaze landed on Lu Sanyang's slender and fair hands. His eyes were extremely dark. Chu Yen heard footsteps outside and stood up. "I'm going back." These words seemed to be directed at Lu Sanyang, but when Lu Sanyang raised her head, she met his dark and deep eyes. She was so frightened that she immediately lowered her head. She didn't want Chu Yen to stay for dinner. If he really stayed, she probably wouldn't be able to eat. Lu Erlang wanted to get up, but his feet hurt so much that he gasped. Hey, hey. Don't go back just yet. Stay for dinner." Lu Erlang scratched the back of his head. "You helped me out of the ditch today. You have to at least allow me to treat you to dinner." Madame Wei came out of the kitchen and called out to Chu Yen. "Thank you for saving Erlang tonight. Stay for a meal. Don't hurry back." Coincidentally, Lu Daolong and Mr. Lu also came back at that moment. The two of them had just entered the courtyard and were confused when they saw Chu Yen. Madame Wei told them, Erlang fell into the ditch on the way back. Chu Yen happened to see him and carried him back. His clothes are all dirty. Mr. Lu smiled. Thank you, Chu Yen. Stay for dinner. You're not allowed to leave my house without eating. Lu Dalong smiled as well. Father is right. Lu Sanyang thought that Chu Yen was an extremely cold person and would definitely not eat at someone else's house. However, in the next second, Lu Sanyang was proven wrong. Chu Yen said calmly, then, I'll stay for dinner. Lu Sanyang was in disbelief. Why did he stay for dinner? Madam Wei smiled. Sanyang, go wash your hands and come to eat. Madam Wei glanced at Lu Erlang in disdain and said, Dalong, take your brother to change his clothes. Look at how dirty he is. Madam Wei frowned and looked at Chu Yen. Chu Yen, you're tall, half a head taller than my son. If you don't mind, you can wear Dalong's clothes first. I'll wash your dirty clothes and return them to you another day. Lu Sanyang immediately thought to herself. Chu Yen will definitely refuse. But in the next second, Chu Yen nodded. All right, thank you. Lu Sanyang looked at Chu Yen with some resentment. She felt that Chu Yen was doing it on purpose to go against her. Chu Yen glanced at Lu Sanyang. With just one look, Lu Sanyang freaked out and did not dare to look at him again. Lu Dalong helped Lu Erlang back to his room along with Chu Yen. Lu Sanyang went to the well in the backyard to get water and wash her hands. She did not want to eat at all. In her memory from her previous life, she had never interacted with Chu Yen. She couldn't even remember who Chu Yen married in his previous life. Whoever married a person like Chu Yen would probably feel terrible. Facing such a person all day long, how unlucky would that person be to become his wife? Little did she know that many years later, she would turn out to be the unlucky person. After washing her hands, she sat by the well in a daze, wondering if she should go in and eat. After thinking about it, Lu Sanyang decided not to eat. She wanted to use the excuse that she was not feeling well and could not eat. Later, she would just ask Madam Wei to cook a bowl of noodles for her. When Lu Sanyang turned around, she was so frightened by the tall figure that her heart skipped a beat. Chu Yen walked towards her. Lu Sanyang lowered her eyes and bit her lips, not knowing why she was so afraid of him. When Chu Yen walked over, Lu Sanyang could even smell his aura. She was so afraid that her legs went weak despite wanting to escape badly. She took 2 steps back with difficulty and wanted to run, but Chu Yen blocked her. Lu Sanyang was about to cry and said softly, "Can you make way?" Chu Yan's voice was deep. "Are you afraid of me?" When she saw him, she was like a mouse seeing a cat or a sheep seeing a wolf. Lu Sanyang was nervous, not knowing what he meant. She thought to herself. Is that so obvious? Lu Sanyang was on the verge of tears. She had never met someone like Chu Yen in her previous life. Her brothers, nephews, and nieces were all very gentle towards her. She had never felt this way before. The eyes with which he looked at her were as dark as ink. Although the danger hidden in the thick ink was invisible, she could still feel it. Moreover, Chu Yen would be an almighty general in the future and become a household name. How could she not be afraid? How could her legs not go weak? She didn't even reach his shoulder. He could crush her with one hand. She was so scared that she wanted to cry. Chu Yen, have you washed your hands? Dinner is ready now. Lu Dalong's voice and footsteps were heard. While Chu Yen was distracted, Lu Sanyang sneaked away. Chu Yen squatted down and washed his hands. Lu Dalong looked at his sister and felt a little strange, but he did not think too much about it. This was the Lu family. Who would dare to do anything to Sanyang? Lu Dalong said, "Sanyang, mother said that these 2 quails are really delicious. Go and try them. You've been sick these past few days, so you need to eat more." Chapter 6. Nothing good happens in the middle of the night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Nothing good happens in the middle of the night. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Lu Sanyang walked into the house. This was a gift from Lu Jie. Although the two quails did not have much meat, the soup made with them was fragrant and tasty. If she sold it, she might get 100 coins. It would be a loss if she didn't try it. Lu Sanyang decided to go for dinner. No matter how scary Chu Yen was, this was after all her house. What could he do to her? Her father, and her elder brothers would definitely kill him if he dared to do anything. Madame Wei had already distributed the bowls and chopsticks. There was a large cornbread in each bowl. There were a total of 5 dishes. The quails were stewed together with potatoes and vegetables, and there was also a bowl of egg soup, a stack of pickled sour and spicy vegetable hair, and a bowl of meat. Everything looked delicious. They did not pick up their chopsticks because they were waiting for Chu Yen to come. Chu Yen arrived very quickly and sat down. Mr. Lu smiled and said, "There is not much food. Don't mind it." Although Mr. Lu said that, his smile was smug. His wife was a cook, so her culinary skills were excellent. Even if it was just a simple stir-fry of cabbage, its taste was extremely good. He was always proud of having such a wife. Chu Yen said to Mr. Lu, "Auntie's cooking is very good. I'm lucky to have the chance to try the dishes today." Madame Wei was very happy to receive a compliment from him. Mr. Lu held a wine gourd and asked, "Do you want a drink?" Chu Yen nodded. "Yes." Mr. Lu poured the wine. "It's good that you can drink. Drink with me." Lu Dalong naturally drank as well, but Lu Erlang was not allowed to drink. Madame Wei glared at him. "Try it if you dare." Lu Erlang instantly cowered. "Mom, I'm injured, of course I won't drink." Lu Sanyang looked at Lu Erlang, who was instantly terrified, and thought of how much Lu Erlang was scared of his wife, and how much he loved drinking in the previous life. Several times, he was pulled out of someone's house by his fierce-looking wife. At this thought, Lu Sanyang could not help but smile. Madame Wei kept giving her daughter the quail meat. When Lu Sanyang unintentionally touched her mother, she heard her thoughts. Madame Wei thought to herself, "With outsiders around, my daughter is too embarrassed to eat. I have to get her more food so she can recover quicker." Lu Sanyang ate with satisfaction, and her eyes curved. It was because of such a mother that no one dared to gossip about her even if she was unmarried in her previous life. Suddenly, Lu Sanyang's heart skipped a beat as she sensed an intense gaze on her. She stole a glance at Chu Yen and met his dark eyes. The food in her bowl instantly lost its fragrance. Her heart trembled, and she was terrified. Chu Yen looked away and ate the cornbread in big mouthfuls. There was a trace of satisfaction in his ink-black eyes. He looked at Lu Sanyang, who was frightened by him, and felt like bullying her even more. After dinner, Chu Yen went back. Madame Wei and Mr. Lu sent him out. Madame Wei said to him, "I'll wash your clothes for you tomorrow and send them to you." In the night, Chu Yen replied in a deep voice, "Okay." He only had one word in response. Back at her room, Lu Sanyang lit a candle and started embroidering. She liked embroidery and cooking, so when she did either of them, she always felt very happy. Her embroidery was exquisite, making the lotus on the handkerchief look lifelike. She could have sold it for money, but she decided to give it to her mother. In her previous life, Madame Wei passed away when she was 50 years old. It had been 25 years that she hadn't seen her mother for, and even in her dream, Lu Sanyang would imagine being loved by her mother again. Now that she was reborn and cherished by her mother again, what she wanted to do the most was to treat her mother well. The sound of the night watch was heard again from outside. "The weather is dry and things are flammable, take care not to catch the fire." Dong! 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 After 3 dongs, the night watch walked away. Lu Sanyang yawned. Putting down the embroidery, she went to sleep. In the middle of the night, she heard a knock on the courtyard door. Someone said anxiously, "Auntie Wei, my wife is about to give birth. We haven't found a midwife yet. Please go and take a look." Madame Wei lowered her voice. "Lu Cheng, let's go. We'll talk on the way." The courtyard door was shut after that. Lu Sanyang suddenly recalled something. In her previous life, it was also this year that Lu Cheng's wife gave birth in the middle of the night. He couldn't find a midwife and asked an old lady to help him deliver the child. In the end, both the mother and child died. The 2 families were very unhappy and went to court. To avoid an autopsy, Lu Cheng cremated the corpse, so that there would be no evidence. The old lady was so angry that she fell seriously ill. She eventually paid 100 taels of silver to settle the matter and avoid going to jail. 100 taels was enough to destroy a family. Lu Sanyang thought that if her family had to fork out 100 taels, it would cost them 10 years of their savings. She immediately got up, put on her clothes, and opened the door quietly. She did not know why in this life, her mother was the one being asked to be the midwife. However, this was not a good thing. She did not know when and why Lu Cheng's wife died. Lu Sanyang was so anxious that her heart was about to jump out of her chest. She had to hurry up and catch up to her mother. This kind of thing must not happen to her family. It was already late at night. The moonlight was pale and it was so quiet that Lu Sanyang could even hear her own heartbeat. For some reason, she felt like someone was following her. Hearing footsteps, she was so scared that her hair stood on end. She quickened her pace, but she was too anxious and actually tripped and fell. Seeing that she was about to fall to the ground, someone reached out to hold her. Lu Sanyang was so frightened that she wanted to scream, but her mouth was covered by a rough hand. "Stop shouting. What do you think people will say about you coming out in the middle of the night?" It was Chu Yan's cold voice which she heard. Lu Sanyang choked her scream back down, but when she was held by Chu Yan, she trembled in fear and stuttered. Let go of me." Chu Yan looked at the girl in front of him. She was soft and fragrant. When he covered her mouth just now, Lu Sanyang had opened her mouth to call for help. Although she didn't make a sound, he could feel her hot breath on his palm. It was itchy. Looking at the terrified sheep, Chu Yan let go of her. Lu Sanyang immediately took a few steps back and maintained a safe distance from Chu Yan. Chu Yan looked at her. "Why are you out so late?" Lu Sanyang was already afraid of him, let alone in such a situation. Without thinking, she replied. "My mother was called out by someone. I'm worried." Chu Yan's eyes darkened. "Which house? I'll take you there." Chapter 7. A Scheme. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. A Scheme. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Lu Sanyang took a deep breath and looked at Chu Yan. "Lu Cheng's family." Chu Yan said in a low voice, "Lead the way." Under the moonlight, Chu Yan's eyes were unclear. However, she saw the corners of his lips curl up. He was smiling. Lu Sanyang was shocked. Why was he smiling? She was almost scared to death by that sinister smile. In her previous life, Lu Sanyang had never interacted with a man, because she was traumatized by how evil some men could be. She wanted to marry a gentle and kind-hearted husband. After meeting Chu Yan 4 times, she was extremely afraid. She felt danger and uncertainty everywhere whenever she was around Chu Yan. Her intuition told her that Chu Yan was not a good person and could not be provoked. If anyone provoked him, they might be eaten alive by him, so she was really scared. Lu Sanyang withdrew her gaze and walked ahead in fear. Soon, Her back was drenched in sweat. She felt like millions of ants were crawling on her back. Chu Yen chuckled. What's there to be afraid of? I won't eat you. Lu Sanyang smiled awkwardly. Hee hee. Chu Yen narrowed his eyes and looked at her back. The soft fragrance on her body was very nice and he liked it very much. Chu Yen smiled. Even if I want to eat you, it won't be now. Lu Sanyang almost fell again. What did this lunatic say? She was just a 14-year-old girl. How could he say such shameless words? Lu Sanyang blushed. After passing 2 streets, she arrived at Daliu Alley. From afar, she saw a brightly lit house and heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing that she was getting closer and closer, Lu Sanyang quickened her pace. When Chu Yen reached out his hand and pulled her into his arms to cover her mouth, she was really frightened to death. She subconsciously opened her mouth and bit Chu Yan's hand. Chu Yen lowered his head and whispered in her ear. Shoo, someone is coming out. Tears welled up in Lu Sanyang's eyes. He was obviously spouting nonsense. She bit his hand hard, but not only did Chu Yen not let go of her, he even covered her mouth tighter. Listen. Chu Yan's expression remained unchanged, as if he could not feel any pain. Lu Sanyang subdued the fear and listened carefully. She really heard the sound of the door opening and footsteps. Brother, I still feel guilty. I can't take it anymore. I want her to live. Lu Qing lowered his voice and said with a trembling voice. One could tell from his voice that he was guilty of something. Don't you want to marry Yang Hua anymore? Your stupid wife hasn't eaten for a few days and is going to die anyway. Lu Shun grabbed Lu Qing and spoke fiercely. He would not let this fool ruin his plan. Lu Shun's wife was disabled, and for her, living was enough a torture. So, they thought it was best for her to die. Lu Qing trembled and said, but, however, when he thought of the woman in labor, he felt uneasy and tormented by guilt because his wife loved him with all her heart. Lu Shun answered coldly. Yang Hua is much prettier than that stupid woman. She won't be willing to become your mistress. She's a virgin. If you're not cruel, it won't be your turn to marry her. I've asked people. The Lu family is quite well off. They can afford to pay 100 or 200 taels of silver for 2 lives. Lu Qing hesitated. Will anyone find out? I'm afraid of going to jail. 100 to 200 taels of silver was not a small sum. With this sum of money, he could marry the woman he loved. His wife was a fool, and because of her, many people laughed at him and mocked him behind his back. He didn't like her to begin with. Moreover, her life was miserable. Death would be a relief to her. Knowing that Lu Qing was convinced, Lu Shun let go of him. He then pretended to say in an indifferent voice. To get rich, you have to take risks. If you're so afraid of risk, then forget it. You can go to the herb store and buy some ginseng to nourish her. This way, the child and adult can definitely be saved. She might even give you a son. Congratulations. Lu Qing became anxious. Brother, don't. I was just being silly. Her pregnancy is difficult and she will definitely die. That Madame Wei is not a midwife. She will kill my wife and child and I will not let her off easily. Lu Shun patted Lu Qing on the shoulder. Well, after this matter is over, we'll go to the Yang family to propose at the end of the year. Next year, you'll be in the same bed with that gorgeous beauty. Lu Qing imagined that scene and no longer felt guilty. He smiled and said, if I really marry her, I will reward you handsomely. This is all thanks to you, brother. Scholars are indeed different. You are smart. Lu Shun said calmly, now go back. Capture Madame Wei and send her to the local government. Lu Qing nodded and left. The door to the small courtyard closed again. When Lu Sanyang heard this, her heart turned cold. How could there be such a vicious person in this world? He actually conspired with his cousin to kill his wife who was in the middle of labor. From their conversation, she could tell that Lu Cheng's wife was a fool. But even if she was a fool, she was still a person, and most of all, she was giving birth to his child. This was a murder. Lu Sanyang was no longer gagged. She said in a hoarse voice, "Thank you." She had misunderstood Chu Yen. "Ah, my poor wife." A shrill cry tore through the night. Lu Sanyang widened her eyes and looked at the brightly lit house. While they were standing there, the atrocity had already been committed. Chu Yen squatted down and said, "Get up. It's too late for you to go in now. Go back immediately and call your family. The more people the better. We can't let their family take the lead. That woman's corpse can't be cremated." Tears streamed down Lu Sanyang's face. She had never encountered such a situation before. She had been protected too well all through her life. When her two sisters-in-law gave birth, her mother, Madame Wei, was sincerely concerned about them. She would boil poached eggs at all times and cook the chicken soup, feeding them whenever there was a chance. She thought that people in this world were mostly good. How could there be such a vicious person? She was at a loss for words. She knew very well that if Lu Cheng cremated the corpse, there would be no evidence of any wrongdoing. However, her entire body was trembling. Chu Yan's voice was calm and clear. She nodded while crying and climbed onto his back. Chu Yan immediately started running. Within a matter of minutes, she had already arrived at the door of her house. Chu Yan sent her in. His eyes were terrifyingly dark. "Don't be afraid. Your father and brothers will know what to do." Chu Yan turned around and quickly disappeared. Lu Sanyang shouted with a trembling voice. "Father, first brother, second brother, get up. Something has happened." Chapter 8. One Corpse Two Lives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. One Corpse Two Lives. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Lu Sanyang was sobbing, her voice hoarse. Mr. Lu, Lu Daolong, and Lu Erlang, who were sleeping, were woken up by Lu Sanyang's shout. They quickly got up and came out. Lu Daolong was the first to come out. "Sanyang, what happened?" There were still tears on Lu Sanyang's face. She choked and said, "First brother, in the middle of the night, Lu Cheng's wife was giving birth and he asked mother to be the midwife. I couldn't fall asleep, so I got up and followed behind her. I heard Lu Cheng shouting 'One corpse, two lives' and saying that mother had killed his wife. He even threatened to send mother to the local government." Mr. Lu said angrily, "How dare he? There must be something fishy going on." Lu Erlang also came out. He immediately said, "Dad, first brother, quick, let's go take a look. My feet are almost healed. I'll go and get our relatives to join us." Even though he did not know what had happened, Mr. Lu would never believe that his wife would harm anyone. When Lu Erlang said this, Mr. Lu nodded. "Daolong, come with me. Erlang, you and Sanyang go and call for help. I want to see who dares to slander my wife." Lu Daolong's expression was serious as he followed Mr. Lu out of the door and towards Lu Cheng's house. Lu Erlang and Lu Sanyang went out to call for help. Almost everyone living in Willow Street was from the Lu family. There were more than 10 families by the surname of Lu, and almost all of them were related to each other. Lu Sanyang and Lu Erlang knocked on the door one by one. As soon as they explained the reason, the men from the families immediately brought their hoes and headed towards Lu Cheng's house. Lu San's family, who usually did not get along with Madame Wei, heard the commotion and opened the door as well. Lu San was put on the spot. He definitely wanted to help his relatives, but his woman did not get along with Madame Wei and would curse each other from time to time. Madame Bai glanced at her husband and said angrily, "What are you waiting for? Go and help. Our Lu family is not a pushover. I don't get along with Madame Wei, but I have no issues with the Lu family. Go, take your sons with you. Whoever is causing trouble, make them learn a bitter lesson." Lu San immediately responded with a laugh. "That's right. Let's go. I want to see who dares to bully our Lu family." Lu Erlang looked grateful. "Thank you, third aunt." Lu Sanyang was also very grateful. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Madame Bai stopped Lu Sanyang. "Don't join in the fun. Stay with me and tell me what's going on." Lu Sanyang was pulled into the house by Madame Bai. Madame Bai's youngest daughter had already gotten up and smiled at Lu Sanyang. "Third sister, don't cry. Your mother will be fine." Madame Bai asked her sternly. "Don't cry. It's useless to cry. Tell me what happened." "It was so noisy just now, so I didn't hear it clearly." "Why did the fool suddenly die in childbirth?" Lu Sanyang sniffed. "I don't know either." In the middle of the night, Lu Qing suddenly came to ask for help. He said that his wife was about to give birth and that the midwife hadn't arrived yet. He asked my mother to go and take a look first. I heard it and felt uneasy. Later, I got up and followed them. Before I entered Lu Cheng's house, I heard cries inside. It was Lu Cheng's mother. She shouted at the top of her lungs that my mother killed her daughter-in-law and grandchild. They even wanted to send my mother to the local government. Madame Bai frowned. "This is not right. Willow Alley is 2 or 3 streets away from Willow Street. Wouldn't it be quicker for them to ask someone from their valley? Why did they come so far to seek help from your mother?" Lu Sanyang looked at Madame Bai in surprise. Madame Bai had always been at odds with her mother. In her previous life, the two of them did not reconcile even until their deaths. Lu Sanyang became a spinster and did not get married, but this third aunt of hers often gossiped about her behind her back. But now, she did not ridicule or mock her, but rationally pointed out the suspicious points. Third aunt. Lu Sanyang's eyes were red, and she wanted to cry again. In her previous life, she wasn't successful and didn't suffer much. In this life, it was the same. She had not experienced great storms, and she could not withstand them. Madame Bai looked at Lu Sanyang angrily. "Why? Do you think I'll hit your family when you're down?" "Humph, I'm not done with your mother yet, but we're all from the Lu family. Isn't the Lu family's motto to be united? I'm not like your mother who doesn't follow the ancestral teachings." After saying that, Madame Bai stood up and walked out. Without looking back, she said, "Stay at my house and sleep with Yin Yang. Men have their own matters, and women have their own matters. If anyone dares to scheme against our Lu family, I'll show them what we are made of." She was not going to sit back and do nothing. Madame Bai searched around and found the bronze gong. With the gong in hand, she left the house and closed the door. Lu Yin-yang stuck out her tongue at Lu Sanyang and smiled. "Third sister, don't worry. My mother is very capable. Your mother will definitely be fine." Lu Sanyang had a deep impression of Madame Bai. With the whole Lu family taking action, Madame Wei would definitely be safe. With this thought in mind, Lu Sanyang heaved a sigh of relief. She followed Lu Yin-yang into the house. Lu Yin-yang was half a year younger than her and was almost at the age of marriage. In her previous life, Lu Yin-yang married a butcher from Ling County. From then on, she rarely returned. Lu Sanyang actually did not remember much about her cousin. But now, Lu Yin-yang was holding Lu Sanyang's hand and smiling gently at her. Lu Sanyang felt a warmth in her heart. Madame Bai was a tough person, so her daughter would probably be so too. "Third sister, can we sleep together?" Lu Yinyang actually liked Lu Sanyang very much because Madame Wei's culinary skills were very good. However, because of the bad relationship between the two families, she could not befriend Lu Sanyang even if she wanted to. Now that she had this opportunity, Lu Yinyang wanted to build a good relationship with Lu Sanyang. At their age, they were sooner or later going to get married. If they could learn some good skills, their lives would be much better after marriage. Lu Yinyang wanted to build a good relationship with Lu Sanyang so that she could ask her about cooking in the future. Diovi Ko, her cousin's friendliness warmed Lu Sanyang's heart even more. She nodded. After falling asleep, Lu Yinan said gently, "Third sister, don't worry. The relatives are all there. Nothing will happen." Lu Yinyang's voice was very gentle, and Lu Sanyang was gradually appeased. She didn't know how to get along with this new friend, but Lu Yinyang made her feel at ease and not worried. It was extremely comfortable to be with Lu Yinyang. Meanwhile, at Willow Valley, Madame Wei had already been tied up by Lu Cheng's mother. Lu Cheng and Lu Cheng's father were extremely angry. They immediately woke up their brothers who were not far away and sent Madame Wei to the local government. Madame Wei could not explain herself. She had been slapped twice by Lu Cheng's mother and she couldn't even think straight. Chapter 9. The Lu family arrives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The Lu family arrives. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. At Lu Cheng's house, Lu Cheng's mother looked at him. "Son, what should we do now?" Lu Cheng was also a little afraid, but with Lu Shun's guidance, his mind was still clear. He licked his lips and said, "Mom, there's no time to waste. Let's cremate this fool's corpse first. We have to be quick." His mother was a little afraid. "That fool's eyes are still wide open. Can we really do that?" Lu Cheng frowned and gritted his teeth. "We have to. Mom, go and prepare the firewood. I'll go and drag the fool's corpse out." He was uneducated, but he knew that his retarded wife's body had to be cremated quickly. He understood the principle of destroying the evidence. He was also afraid, but when he thought of the beautiful Yang Hua, he was not scared of anything. Lu Cheng walked towards the pigpen. This was a farmer's tradition. Childbirth shouldn't be done in the house, or it would bring bad luck to the family. His wife was a fool to begin with. His mother had spent hundreds of copper coins to buy her. Now that she was dead, she was still of some use. It was worth it. Lu Cheng thought that he would not be afraid, but when he walked into the pigpen and looked at the woman lying on the hay, his entire body had goosebumps. The woman gripped a handful of hay tightly with both hands. Her eyes were slightly open, as if she had been extremely unwilling to die. Lu Cheng went forward and was about to drag the woman out by her hands. However, when he looked down, he saw the woman's wide-open eyes. Lu Cheng took off his clothes to cover the woman's face before dragging her out. Lu Cheng's mother had already piled up a lot of firewood and was putting oil on it. That's their house. Hurry, hurry." Mr. Lu raised his hand and knocked on the door. "Lu Cheng, open the door." Lu Cheng's mother was shocked. "Son, they are here. Why are they here so soon?" According to the plan, the Lu family shouldn't have reached here so fast. They were supposed to find out about the matter by the next day. By then, the corpse would have been cremated. At that time, there would be no evidence, and the Lu family would have no choice but to compensate them. Lu Cheng also panicked. "Mom, I don't know. Brother Shun didn't tell me this would happen." It was clearly too late for cremation. They didn't open the door, but Mr. Lu and his family couldn't wait any longer. They started smashing the door. Madame Bai, who arrived a bit slower, started knocking on the gong. "Murder, someone is murdered," the sound of the gong shook the earth. Lu Cheng's mother jumped up with fright and looked at Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng was also at a loss. The door burst open and Lu Cheng braced himself. What do you want? Lu Dalong's face darkened. He took 2 steps forward and picked up Lu Cheng. Where's my mother? Lu Cheng immediately cowered down and softened his tone. She's sent to the government. Lu Dalong was about 1.85 meters tall and strong. The way he raised his fists in anger was really scary. Lu Cheng was frightened. To protect her son, Lu Cheng's mother pounced on Lu Dalong. You murderers actually dare to hit my son. Where is justice in this world? It's still not clear who the murderer is. You're going to cremate the body. You want to destroy the evidence. Lu Erlang pointed angrily at the body in the courtyard. The woman was pregnant, and her stomach was very big. At this moment, 2 lives were lost. It looked extremely uncomfortable, but Lu Cheng did not even prepare a coffin. It seemed that they did not even plan to take out the stillbirth in the woman's stomach. They just wanted to cremate her like this. It would be strange if they were not guilty. Lu Erlang said angrily, Dad, let's report this to the local government as well. Hearing that, Lu Cheng's mother burst into a fury and pounced on Lu Erlang. Damn it, this is too much. The murderer is lawless. Before she could reach Lu Erlang, she was stopped by the women who came in later. We still have to wait for the magistrate to decide who the murderer is. It's not up to you. Madame Bai spoke with a smile. The wives of the few granduncles in the family also stopped Lu Cheng's mother. With Madame Bai ringing the gong, all the people in Willow Alley were woken up. The women of every household pushed their men out to see what was going on. Lu Shun came out immediately. The Lu family had arrived too quickly. Lu Shun knew that something was wrong. Lu Shun squeezed into the courtyard. Lu Cheng saw him and immediately said, Brother, save me. These people are lawless. Lu Shun was a scholar, and many people in the Lu family knew him. Uncles, can I, Lu Shun, say something? Lu Shun walked to Lu Cheng's side and bowed. The expressions of the Lu family members softened a lot. Mr. Lu frowned and winked at Lu Dalong. Lu Dalong let go of Lu Cheng. With so many people around, it was impossible for Lu Cheng to cremate the corpse. Seeing this, Lu Shun bowed again before saying, Uncles, there must be a misunderstanding in this matter. Can I be your middleman and explain the situation? Let's not ruin our relationship because of this misunderstanding. The Lu family looked at Mr. Lu. Lu Shun was a scholar, had good looks, and spoke gently and politely. They really wanted to give Lu Shun a face, but they still had to listen to Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu recalled what his wife had mentioned to him before. Lu Shun had gotten a matchmaker to say on his behalf that he had taken a fancy to Sun Young. He had been wanting to find an opportunity to test Lu Shun. Although this was not the best time, if Lu Shun could handle it well, he could prove himself an excellent son. In law, Mr. Lu nodded. Okay, then you can be the middleman. Lu Shun smiled. Thank you, uncle. Lu Cheng said to Lu Shun, Brother, you have to seek justice for me. Auntie Wei killed my wife. 2 lives were lost. You have to seek justice for me. Lu Shun patted Lu Cheng's shoulder and was about to speak when he heard a sneer. Bah, I'm dying of laughter. The person who spoke was Madame Sun, who was on good terms with Madame Bai. The 2 of them were from the same village and had married into Willow Street together. Madame Sun and Madame Bai were on the same side. The 2 of them and Madame Wei were not on good terms, but when it came to major matters, they were willing to put aside the grudge. Madame Sun placed her hands on her hips. In all my life, this is really the funniest joke. Which woman doesn't have to risk their life giving birth? Whether she can live or not all depends on God. Why is it that when it comes to your wife, she's murdered? Lu Shun frowned slightly. He hated old ladies the most, especially gossipy old ladies. When talking to old ladies, it was impossible to reason with them. After Madame Sun finished speaking, Madame Bai added with a sneer. You said that Madame Wei caused your wife's death. I think it's you who wanted to kill your wife for money. Madame Wei is a cook. Everyone in the village knows that she's good at cooking. Willow Alley is a few streets away from our Willow Street. Why didn't you find a midwife in your neighborhood? Why did you want a cook to be the midwife? Chapter 10. Idiots, a whole family of idiots. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Idiots, a whole family of idiots. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Facing the two women, Lu Shun felt a headache coming on. Lu Qing panicked and looked at Lu Shun for help. Lu Cheng's mother was also flustered. How could the Lu family be so eloquent? Lu Daolong and Lu Erlang looked at Madame Sun and Madame Bai in surprise. Did these two aunties speak up for his mother? Did the sun rise from the west? You're slandering me. Lu Qing felt guilty and became flustered. He even stuttered. Mr. Lu would be a fool if he still couldn't understand what was going on. After Lu Qing finished speaking, Lu Shun knew that there was no chance of turning the tables now. Lu Qing was as much a fool as his wife. Lu Shun originally thought that after the corpse was cremated, there would be no evidence. He did not expect the Lu family to come so quickly and disrupt his plans. Lu Shun smiled and said, "Uncle, there must be a misunderstanding." Lu Qing reacted so strongly because he was too anxious. Auntie Wei is innocent. I hope Uncle can understand that this child was the hope of the family, but he's gone just like that. If the Lu family had come a little slower, things would not have ended up like this. Mr. Lu said, "Then what do you think we should do?" Lu Cheng's mother interrupted immediately. Of course, you have to compensate us. Even a pig and a cow have to be compensated, let alone a human. Although my daughter Law was a fool, she had a child inside her. This is 2 lives. Without 180 taels, don't even think about resolving this matter. Lu Shun frowned and secretly clenched his fists, thinking to himself. Idiots, a family of idiots. Father, I think they're trying to extort money from our family. Report to the government and get the coroner to come for an autopsy. We can't allow others to frame Mother, said Lu Erlang. Mr. Lu nodded. Lu Shun was a little anxious. Uncle, Mr. Lu was a little disappointed in Lu Shun. You don't have to say anything. This is a matter between our Lu family and Lu Cheng's family. It has nothing to do with you. After the test, Mr. Lu felt that Lu Shun was not a good candidate to be his son-in-law. He had the arrogance of a scholar, but he wasn't very capable. He could tell that Lu Shun was a scheming person. Such a person was not suitable for Sonyang. One had to live a down-to-earth life. It would be very tiring to live with someone like Lu Shun. Report to the government. Let the magistrate judge who is right and who is wrong. Mr. Lu asked Lu Daolong and Lu Erlang to capture Lu Cheng. Both Lu Cheng's mother and Lu Cheng started resisting and struggling. Giddy up, the sound of horses galloping could be heard in Willow Valley. The officer in the lead shouted. The authority is investigating a case. Please make space immediately. An officer came over. Mr. Lu and the others gave their way for the officer to come in. The person was dressed in black with the word officer embroidered on his chest. He held a sword in his hand, making people feel scared. Lu Cheng's mother had already knelt down, trembling like a sieve. For commoners who had never seen an officer in their lives, they immediately felt an enormous pressure, like a mouse seeing a cat. Seeing Lu Cheng's mother trembling like this, Madame Bai covered her mouth and mocked. Look at how guilty she is. With such a gut, she even dared to murder. How funny. Lu Cheng's legs were also weak. He glanced at Lu Shun, but was frightened by the coldness in Lu Shun's eyes. Lu Shun looked at him as if he was looking at a dead man. "Officer, you have to investigate carefully. My daughter-in-law died too miserably. I still have an unborn grandson in her womb." Lu Cheng's father jogged back with the officer. He thought that the corpse would have been cremated at this moment and started crying as soon as he reached the house. The leading officer glanced at him coldly. "Coroner, take the body back to the mortuary for autopsy." Lu Cheng's father was stunned. "Corpse? What corpse? Shouldn't the dead person be cremated by now?" "Sir, the corpse is here. My wife was wrongly accused. Fortunately, we came in time. Otherwise, they would have cremated the corpse. If that happens, there will be no evidence to prove my wife innocent." The more Mr. Lu thought about it, the angrier he became. The officer said expressionlessly, "This matter will be decided by the magistrate after the investigation. The magistrate is fair and honest. He won't let a bad person off, nor will he wrong a good person." The officer waved his hand, and the bailiffs immediately put down the stretcher. They went forward in pairs, carried the woman's body onto the stretcher, and quickly carried it out. The officer looked at Mr. Lu, who had the advantage in numbers, and then looked at Lu Cheng's family, who did not look confident at all. He asked calmly, "Which of you is the plaintiff and which of you is the defendant? Follow me back to the government office." When Lu Cheng's mother heard this, her body went limp and she fainted. Lu Cheng was also at a loss. Brother, help me, you." Seeing that Lu Cheng was about to ruin things if he continued speaking, Lu Shun immediately interrupted him. "It's fine. It's a misunderstanding. Just explain the misunderstanding." On the other hand, Mr. Lu responded calmly. "All right, we'll go with you." The officer left the courtyard and mounted his horse, leading his men back to the government. Mr. Lu said to Lu Erlang, "Go back. If San Yang is asleep, don't wake her up. If she's not asleep, tell her it's all settled and let her go to bed. I will definitely bring your mother back soon." Lu Erlang nodded. His foot was still injured. He didn't feel it before, but now the pain was coming back. The women also went home. A few people around Lu Erlang's age patted him on the shoulder, telling him not to worry. Madame Bai waved her hands. "I won't eat San Yang if she stays at my house. You can come to pick her up when your mother comes back. Of course, you can drop a few coins for her meal if you want." Madame Bai was really not on good terms with Madame Wei. The two of them did not get along, but Madame Bai was not someone who would kick someone when they were down. Lu Erlang nodded. "Okay, Auntie. Thank you." Lu Erlang returned home and sat down to massage his feet. The next day, when Lu Sanyang got up, Lu Yinyang had already woken up. When Lu Sanyang came out, Madame Bai was chopping pigweed in the courtyard. She glanced at Lu Sanyang. "You're up. Stay here with Yinyang. Later, you can go home and get some clean clothes. There won't be anyone at your house for the next few days, stay at my house." Lu Sanyang nodded. She was obedient. Lu Yinyang was cooking, so Lu Sanyang went to help her. Lu Yinyang smiled. "Sanyang, don't worry. My mother told me that Lu Cheng's family is guilty and your mother is innocent.